Hi, I'm Ayita Rigodaro and welcome back to my Savvy Guide to Collecting Art series. If you'd like to know a little more about this series, how it originated, and about my own background in art, do please take a look at the very first video and I'll pop an image above so you know what that looks like. And in the meantime, let me know how you're getting on. Have you started collecting? Would you like to collect? What are you interested in? What's your motivations for collecting? And I'd love to know how you're getting along. What's going well? What's not going so well? Hopefully my own experiences can help you along the way. And as ever, if you do enjoy this content, I greatly appreciate it if you could hit those like and subscribe buttons. Thank you so much.
Size matters, assigning value to an artwork. Perhaps the most baffling question to get to grips with when it comes to getting started collecting or investing in art is the question of how much any given artwork is worth. Unlike, say, a barrel of oil or the price of gold, there isn't necessarily an exact market rate that can be measured, at least in the traditional sense. That said, there are certainly parameters that can guide us and help us to get a realistic sense of how the art market values a particular work at any given time. So in this chapter, we'll set out the considerations that help us to assign a monetary value to a work of art. When assessing monetary value, before we even begin to consider the physical work of art, we need to look at the artist who created the artwork. And by the way, yes, this section relates to physical works of art and does not include NFTs or performance art, which will be looked at separately. The first thing to understand is that the artist's name and reputation is the single biggest factor in assigning value to an investment-grade work of art. When considering the value of an artwork, we need to have an overview of the career trajectory of the artist to understand the prestige and credibility of the institutions and exhibitions in which their art has been showcased to date. Are they represented by a respected gallery that represents other leading artists? Has this artist's work been shown at a well-known or even household name museum, such as, say, Tate in the UK or the Metropolitan Museum of Art in the USA, for example? Has their work featured in an exhibition or collection that has achieved a very high profile? If the answer to these questions is yes, the likelihood is that before we even narrow down to assess the individual artwork, we can understand that its price will likely be higher than a similar work by an artist for whom we cannot answer yes to the above questions. But what do I mean by similar work, you might ask? And this is the part where we take a look at the individual artwork and assess its components. Let's get straight to a thorny question. Does size matter? From my observations during my time in the art world, it definitely does. Put simply, a larger work by the same artist in the same condition and medium is typically more expensive than a smaller one. It makes sense. Often it would take longer to fill a large canvas than a smaller one, and the materials needed are greater. Plus, for the collector, a larger work fills more wall or floor space and often makes a greater immediate impact. However, there will of course be times when this rule of thumb does not hold true. A very small work might have some extra element that elevates its price. Perhaps it has been held in a very famous or even infamous collection. But on the whole, the larger work is often priced higher than the smaller when other contributing factors are similar. Then let's look at artistic medium. Works on paper are generally more affordable than works on canvas, controlling for other variable factors, of course. Likewise, quality is important. A work that is faded or obscured in some way will be worth less than a work in pristine condition. Restoring work sometimes helps, but over-restoring works can also lessen the price. So, a pristine work in its original incarnation would be the optimal condition. And lastly, let's look at provenance. Given the weight that the artist's name carries when valuing an artwork, the issue of provenance, or tracking the ownership history of a particular work, is paramount. To know the provenance of an artwork is to guarantee as much as is possible that the work was actually produced by the artist the work is attributed to, and furthermore, that it has been preserved and cared for in an appropriate manner. And while impeccable provenance will not necessarily add value to the artwork, Poor or contested provenance credentials will almost certainly detract from the price or hinder future sale prospects. Now, for those of you who like to take a mathematical approach to data, there is one way to keep track of a portion of artists' exact sale prices in this way, provided their works have been sold at auction. So these are artists who have a secondary market, i.e. their works have not only been bought once from the artist or artist's estate or their gallery, but have also been sold on after that. Auction houses routinely publish auction sales prices as soon as the auction is concluded. These typically include a buyer's premium, so the published prices are slightly higher than the sell price. Nonetheless, it is possible to view this information and understand the sorts of prices that particular artists are achieving for particular types of works. Timing is crucial. As in other markets, prices fluctuate in the art market over time, so it's important to understand what is happening in the current market and also look at patterns over time. What is rising, what is stagnating, and what has decreased. Auction prices will not be relevant for all artworks, particularly earlier career artists. Therefore, an approach that amalgamates all of the above considerations should give you a good sense for understanding where an artwork sits within the vast spectrum of possible prices.